From a 16-team playoff to the shocking Jake Retzlaff news, all the way to Cody Campbell dominating college football, the Big 12 storylines are packed. This is the Big 12 squad. Is that how I usually intro that? It felt weird.
You're talking ball with the Big 12 squad, sponsored by Game Time. From Oklahoma State to Utah, from Kansas State to BYU, from Houston to Texas Tech, it's the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network bringing you scoops, breakdowns, and the most comprehensive preview of the upcoming Big 12 weekend. Buckle up, it's the Big 12 squad, and we have a seat for you. No hurt feelings and thin skin allowed. Squad up. You're part of the Big 12 squad.
Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to the Big 12 squad. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12, with Jake Hatch of Locked On Cougars, Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Cougs. What's the difference? Cody Stovall of Locked On Oklahoma State, JT Westerfield talks all things Utah, Richie Bradshaw with the Sun Devils, and Derek Johnson of Locked On Jayhawks talking Kansas. Just got off of a jet ski in Lake Tahoe, and I have a wine
Such a
tasting.
fast flex. You are hilarious. You are hilarious. We should have done over and under on how quickly you dropped
with
that.
What was different? What was different is your face is on fire and the bed behind you is
That's
messy.
not different.
That's what's
His
different
face is
today.
always on fire.
It's wind burn, and I have a wine tasting to get to. So Jake Hatch, the host,
Windburn?
Whoa.
You never heard of
making
windburn?
stuff
You said you
up.
were in Tahoe, not Catalina. I'm
Wine
calling
tasting.
bogus.
Oh, yeah. Oh, what? There's not wine in Tahoe now?
Not a mixer.
Mixer Drake.
That's great.
Freaking
Plenty of
Catalina wine.
storylines abound. He's the journalist. He works KSL, right? Which is just like the best. Thank goodness KSL only talks good about BYU and terrible about Utah. Because rightfully so. Objective journalism. It's Jake Hatch, host of Locked On Cougars. Jake, take it away, boys.
All right.
He didn't even say he was going to do that. Wow.
Well, with that introduction, guys, I think we've been hurt before, but what's the SEC doing?
Torpedo on college football. That is the only logical answer. The question is, what does Greg Sankey have? He's got to have some benefit to absolutely torpedoing all of college football. At one point in time, it was just beneficial for the SEC. Yeah, we get that. But it feels like it's going beyond that. Like it's becoming personal. I don't get it.
What I love here, what has to be happening here, right, is they understand that the schools in the Big 12 and the schools in the ACC are more valuable than like the Mississippi States in the world, and they haven't figured out how to get rid of them yet, right? like if they thought those schools were more valuable, they would have already left. They haven't figured it out yet, and so they can't get rid of us. They can't do it because they know we're more valuable than the bottom tiers of their conference.
Well, last week we talked about the pores. They haven't been able to find out how to get rid of their own pores. Let's just put it that way.
Richie still feels his face when you say that every time.
Okay, because the other thing about this, because it does feel like it's personal, because he's calling out the ACC and the Big 12, saying that their coordinated statement, and then we have the head of Big 12's PR arm say there was no such statement put out.
We never made a statement.
Greg, what
an idiot.
statement are you referring to? Is there one
it's just really unfortunate, especially when we just came to this agreement on this new, we'll reseed the playoff, just whoever the top teams are get to be up there at the top. I think that's such a favor to the Big 10 and SEC, it feels like too. And I know that I think the statement Commissioner Phillips put out was like, oh, it's a favor to the red. Like we're just doing right by the sport. It's terrible for the ACC and Big 12 in order to agree to that. But we all know the Big 10 and SEC are just going to get their way eventually. So now they just get it a year sooner.
So Richie's going to speak on behalf of the member of us that I guess made the playoff last year. But I would point out before we get to the transitive property that Arizona State and Texas played very closely. Texas and Georgia played very closely. This is not as simple as math, but that math would indicate that the Big 12 champ would hang with whatever champ they put us out there with in a given year. Obviously, there's like one off year here, one off year there. That's just different. But in a given year, I think Richie's program in particular showed that we're fine and deserve the championship bye like anybody else would have.
Right. And let me add on to that, because when I was previewing ASU versus Texas, and Locked On Sun Devils was very popular in Austin, Texas for about a month-long period, the one thing that I repetitively was told over and over again is ASU does not have the personnel, the players to stack up with Texas. We don't have the NFL players. We're not big enough. We're not strong enough. We're not fast enough. And one of the things that I had said and got ripped on was, sometimes it's not about being the biggest, baddest dude on the field. If you're good at football, you're good at football. Cam Scatterdo, not the fastest guy in the world, not the biggest guy in the world. Last I checked, he was the Peach Bowl MVP on the losing team because he simply was better than Texas that day. And that is something that gets pushed on the rest of the Big 12 and the rest of the ACC is everyone looks and they go, well, they don't have SEC talent. They don't got Ohio State talent. And it's like just so disrespectful because you're not looking at the rest of the team entirely. You're looking at, oh, look how many 5 stars ASU has. Look how many 4 stars Kansas State has. That's all that matters to them and to the media and the fans and everything is they look at the stars and they look at the AP rankings and everything, and they're not paying attention to the fact that the Big 12 was deeper than the Big 10 was last year. Mm-hmm. Our 8th place team was better than the Big 10's 8th place team. We talked on here a few weeks ago, gentlemen, about how dominant this conference is with quarterbacks. Like, I can sit here and tell you Sam Levitt's number 1, but, I mean, we could have a conversation about several
behind
guys.
Connor Wegman. I mean,
if we can get Nick the floor for a second so he can talk about Robert.
The other thing about it is we're seeing these SEC coaches, they've been trotting up to the microphones down there in Destin, and they've been saying, well, the committee and this and that. And I don't get where the SEC comes off thinking that they're going to get away with this. We have the congressman from Pennsylvania saying that the SEC and the Big Ten better watch out. And that guy's from Big Ten country. He's from Pennsylvania. He's saying he's going to haul in these leaders into congressional hearings. You get subpoenaed by Congress. That could be a whole lot of fun to really dig into that background.
I know Spencer McLaughlin's licking his chops about that.
See, I just wonder if, does Greg Sankey actually believe the stuff he's saying? I kind of wonder if he doesn't. What is one way that you can get people on your side? I mean, we not to make this political, but we see this in the political world all the time. It's try to antagonize your opponent. It doesn't matter what side of the party you're on. You're trying to antagonize your opponent. And so Greg Sankey saying stuff like, oh, well, clearly then we're just making all that matters, the win-loss column and stuff like that, not the strength of schedule. Even though a year before this year, you have Florida State at 13-0 getting left out for a 1-loss Alabama team. It's hypocritical. I refuse to believe that Greg Sankey in the position he's in is not a smart enough guy to not know what he's doing. So I think he knows he's being a hypocrite. I don't think he cares. He's trying to alienate the rest of the country, because then what happens is you alienate the ACC, the Big 12, all these other schools, and then all of a sudden you wait for them to strike at the SEC, to say something they're not supposed to do something they're not supposed to, and then Greg Sankey can play the victim card and say, oh, see, no, this is your fault.
But him being a martyr doesn't make it any better if it's a bad cause. Like that doesn't matter. And the what caused him to do this or say these kinds of stupid things doesn't matter. It doesn't make them less problematic and stupid. He's trying to take down the sport as we know it in a way that, frankly, is detrimental to everyone involved. Because I know I jokingly opened up with Mississippi State, but there are teams in the SEC at the bottom part of that conference that, frankly, would not benefit from them breaking off. They just wouldn't.
Well, he's operating like it's a conglomerate business. He's operating like, hey, I'm going to take everybody else out of business, and now I'm going to be the multi-billion-dollar business. The problem with that is this is not Walmart. This is not a superstore that you buy everybody else out, and then everybody's going to come shopping at you. The problem is if you do that, you're going to make the sport way worse, and everybody who's outside of a couple of states is going to hate it.
Well, I think it's ironic that Parker mentioned Sankey viewing himself as a potential martyr, because one thing I feel like he might be missing is part of this. Does Osama bin Sankey not remember that the Big Ten has won the last 2 national titles? Could it perhaps be that Osama bin Sankey is flailing and grasping like a
he
child
doubled down on
because
it?
He understands that the SEC has to be put up on this pedestal. Without it, then they lose some of their cachet. The Big Ten has won the last 2 natties, and they're not huffing and puffing. Matter of fact, they're having logical conversations about potentially doing a third-party entity because they have an understanding that Brett Yormark is pretty intelligent. Greg Sankey is just he's a smooth criminal.
Well, remember, this is the SEC that schedules the Citadel for Week 12 every single year, talking about strength of schedule. So,
but hypothetically speaking.
Well, hold on, Lane Kiffin.
The only thing I want to say
Yeah.
really quick is just I really hope we do what we can to protect any given Saturday. Arizona State versus Texas proved that still exists, and they're trying
Yes,
to take
sir.
that away from us, and it sucks.
It's the best. Any given Saturday, it's what makes college football the best sport on planet Earth.
And this conference the best too.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. JT,
Well,
I
yeah,
know
Utah
you
gotta make it
fans
a
don't
point.
want to
I
be
think
here, but I
low-key-
want to be here.
They talk crap, but I honestly think that they kind of loathe the fact that the Big 12 is competitive every single week. Yeah, they have the major brands that carry a lot of the TV numbers, but if the Big 12 is constantly the conference that is the most entertaining, eventually those TV numbers have to be indicative of that. And I think Sankey is afraid of the Big 12 ever catching up.
You know what
Or
else
the
the Big 12
fun
has
league.
for the Big 12 has this for TV numbers too, guys.
Yep.
Hey, Molly.
Oh.
All right.
Great for TV numbers. Always great for TV numbers.
Coming up next, a program that is obviously near and dear to my heart has a quarterback controversy, and it could open the door for a number of other Big 12 programs to take advantage. We'll get into that next as the Big 12 squad rolls on.
And we're only getting started with FanDuel. Folks, the NBA playoffs are in full swing. They have been awesome. So have the Stanley Cup playoffs. Every night deserves and delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. Guys, live betting is such a game changer. You could be betting on player props and lines that are adjusting and adapting throughout the game. Sometimes you don't have a good feel before the game starts, but you get a hunch during the game. Performance trends, same game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And if you're new to FanDuel, another great thing about FanDuel is whether you're an experienced sports bettor or you're just looking to get into it because you see all your friends having so much fun, it is so easy and it's so user-friendly. And it's the perfect time to sign up because when you head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet right now, if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All right, guys. Big news out in Provo, Utah last week. BYU quarterback Jake Retzlaff facing a civil lawsuit alleging, among other things, sexual assault by a woman almost 2 years ago, going back to November of 2023. Obviously, there's a ton of this that is still unknown, so many different layers to this in terms of when it's going to go to trial and all this. But the one thing, and Drake and I have done it, we did a crossover edition. The biggest thing is it opens the door for other Big 12 squads to potentially jump into a spot that a lot of people thought BYU was going to be in this fall, and that is as a Big 12 contender, because you don't have QB1 in Provo. It seems to be a problem.
Hey, thankfully for you guys, Alan Bowman is ready, and he's been on an 8-year mission to get better. You guys love your missions. You love elderly
He's still
quarterbacks.
there.
I have one for you.
How many doctorates does he have?
But
They're not
running out of
you, man.
He might have two. Yeah, he might have two. This did strike me, though, when we opened and Drake was like, what's the difference between the two Cougars? I'm like, the difference is that if this were happening in Houston, he would say it was consensual and probably just play, and there would be no question. I feel like, Jake, you need to speak a little bit, though, to like how unique the BYU of this all, because just up the road, JT would not have quite the same issues. It would become a he said, she said, consensual, not consensual kind of
There's
thing.
still be issues, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, so here's the deal. BYU has the added layer of the honor code that they acquire of every student, including every student athlete that plays at BYU. The honor code forbids premarital sex, drinking, drugs, and other behaviors that are against those codes that they obviously require their students to abide by. And that adds the element here, because you mentioned that, Parker. Okay, you can allege sexual assault, but obviously the defense would be it's consensual sex. Well, here's the thing. Jake Retzlaff, his lawyer said he's factually innocent. A lot of people believe that his plea is going to be that it was consensual sex. The deal is, under BYU's guidelines, that's against the honor code, and that is grounds for A, suspension, and B, potentially expulsion from school. So I mentioned there's multiple layers to this. We have a legal element here. We have a moral element involving BYU, and we just have inside the university itself. They obviously have precedent previously of other athletes running afoul of the honor code, either being thrown out of school, withdrawing from school themselves to avoid being thrown out, and also facing suspension. So like I said, there are so many different elements to this, and I have no idea which way it's going to go.
What was the Brandon Davies one? How long was he for the full year, or was that just a number of games?
Davies withdrew from school late in that basketball season. That was Jimmer Fredette in 2011. He was actually he left school for an entire semester and then re-enrolled the following semester, essentially. So he missed about 6-ish months.
Can't really do that in football, though.
Exactly. And the other
season.
This being a civil lawsuit, I've had a number of legal experts say that the earliest this goes to trial is mid to late 2026. Well, that doesn't work with the timeline of this upcoming football season.
No, and I want to stress though, while we're talking about going to trial and those kind of things, like we're all assuming innocent still proven guilty because that is the court of law. That's what we do here. And like obviously, if he's found guilty, like throw him under the stadium. That's a whole different thing, right? That's not what we're trying to say. But the BYU of it is what's interesting to me because they're clearly in the NIL game and going to have a quarterback involved. Like that doesn't seem like that doesn't seem like a question. But the BYU of it is also to me why. I mean, bluntly and just openly speaking, they did a very big marketing campaign around this guy not being of the LDS faith. Like that was kind of his thing for a while. And now he's doing non-LDS things. And it's like, whoa there, man.
Come on, he labeled himself the BYU Jew. That was the nickname he appointed himself when he arrived in Provo. He's a very active member of the Jewish faith. He's obviously got that deal with Manischewitz, which is one of the premier brands of kosher foods out there. He traveled with Bob Kraft to New Orleans for the Super Bowl on Bob Kraft's dime. He just went to Israel with a number of his teammates for Athletes for Israel, which is they go over every year and run football camps. They pick one football team, and it was BYU this year. The interesting level to this, guys, is Derek, you talked about Brandon Davies. Brandon Davies was a really, really good basketball player. But remember, that was Jimmer Fredette. We're talking the best basketball player in the country that was on that team. We're not talking about QB1 of a team that went 11-2 and finished inside the top 15 last year. We have never seen an athlete of this high a profile in Provo, to your point, Parker, who has really become almost a national and international sensation in some ways, face what he's facing right now. And the timeline on this is completely undefined, and we're under 100 days till the football season begins.
Yeah, it's hard to believe when you factor that part of it into too. Like we're 100 days away, and that this level of a story is not just rocked even the state, the school, but even the Big 12 itself has been absolutely. There's so much still to be determined about this, and it's just going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out, what the timelines are, Jake. And I also do want to just commend you, Jake. I think you've done a fantastic job covering all of this. People like to say certain things about our network as a whole and the coverage we provide. I was very proud to call you a colleague last week. I thought you did a great job covering all of this and knocking it out of the park. So I also just wanted to give you your flowers there, my friend.
Look at that. A compliment from a Ute. There we go.
Somebody had mentioned NIL earlier.
One and only, man.
This has kind of always been an issue with collegiate athletes, and it definitely goes both ways. There's equal amounts of hearsay versus actual, tangible evidentiary proof. But nonetheless, this should be factored into NIL nowadays a little bit more so. Just like the NFL athletes, right? They have the conversations with them when you go through the drafting process, is you're going to put yourself out there to make more mistakes. I think with NIL, this is part of the conversation that needs to be had. If we're moving to an NFL model, these guys need to be aware that you have more cash attached to you now that you're in college, so you're more of a susceptible target.
Well, and that's
big time.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is there are a number of Cougar fans out there, and I don't blame them for bringing this up, is why was this filed almost 18 months after the fact? Obviously, there was a criminal investigation done by Provo Police, and the quote from Provo Police Department was they had no actionable intel in terms of the investigation they had to move forward with anything. So like I said, the levels to this go deep, and there's it's absolutely insane to consider how many different things are gonna have to play out if Jake Retzlaff really ever hopes to see the field again for BYU.
There's some pretty serious things leveled at the police, to your point, of in that article as well too. That's just a lot. There's a lot going on in that article.
It's very, very sad, the state that we're in right now with everything that's going on.
You've done a really good job of covering this, and can you explain a little bit? And I have questions about they kind of got her to say it was him at some point recently. And then how did that work? Because it wasn't that it wasn't reported because there was a DNA test done 18 months ago, but she didn't say who it was or something.
Yeah, so initially she did not want to name who it was, and they had multiple victims advocates reach out to her, and they essentially had to go to her and say, hey, we've had reports of maybe another athlete who's been involved here. We want to see if it's the same name. And then she finally revealed the name. But then they've retracted that statement, so far as I'm aware, saying that they actually don't have corroborating, essentially, reports. They have a police report from that same period that they think is the same thing, but there's not names attached to it because this victim, the alleged victim, has never, I guess, to Provo Police Department's knowledge, ever positively identified to them who the suspect is.
Oh.
So I wish I could, and I have Cougar fans obviously across the country who are like, okay, well, Jake Retzlaff going to play for BYU? Straw poll. I think a lot of people think that just due to the layers of this and how prolonged the timeline could be, I have a hard time seeing it play out. But
if this were a university, in your opinion, Jake, as someone who's followed this really closely, if this were a non-faith-based university, would he be playing this fall?
I think it's so long as he said that he did not do it. Yes, if it was a secular university, like if it was a secular university, but the fact that this is a faith-based element and a university that obviously espouses the ideals it does, and obviously has that honor code that plays into this and has precedent of A, suspending athletes, and B, having them either leave school or kicking them out, that indicates to me that Jake Retzlaff may have seen his final snaps in a collegiate uniform.
Yeah, unfortunately, with the honor code thing, if nothing happens, it kind of takes a little bit of credibility hit. It's just an unfortunate byproduct of all of this.
Right. I mean, you talk about such a unique situation. Like Parker said, the difference between the Cougars is if this happens at the University of Houston, we're talking about a completely different situation than what's going on at BYU. So that just adds so many more layers to this that just complicates everything so much. And it's why this is such an intense conversation to be having.
Yeah, well, we all know if he was playing for Georgia, this would have never even been a story. Nobody would have ever heard about it.
Well, no, he'd be driving right now.
He'd be driving.
Right.
Yeah. Him and Mike Gundy, man.
Greg Sankey would have been approving the first ever non-athlete NIL deal.
Oh,
and if this were at Florida, we'd hear about it in 15 years when a teammate did something crazy for the Patriots. That's a whole separate deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
all right, coming up next. Money. We've talked a lot of money already today with the SEC, but money that actually resides in this conference. Do we have a power player in our midst that we need to prop up more than we already are? We'll get to that as the Big 12 squad rolls on. All right, gentlemen, Cody Campbell. That name has emerged, and obviously, if you were a Texas Tech fan, you know who Cody Campbell is. Played for Mike Leach, an offensive lineman for the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Has gone on to not only sell billion-dollar companies, but multiple billion-dollar companies, and then kind of just reconstitutes it and sells it for another couple $1 billion. And now he's running the Matador Club, and apparently here President Trump was going to be on that proposed collegiate summit that was supposed to be with Nick. Are we underrating the fact that we have a power player in this conference that I think needs to be propped up more than he already is?
Well, in some ways, you could say we have two, Jake. And unfortunately, I think that's also your school in some ways. When you look at the talent they've landed for basketball, they need to do more for football, I would say, overall. But when you look at basketball, what you guys are building, you have a team that could, I hate to say this, you have a team that could win the national championship on the hardwood next year. So I think you guys are trending in that direction. And with the SEC, well, they could. You're going to say they can't? You're going to say they can't, Parker?
I'm not going to say they can't. I'm just going to say they've got to play some other Cougars too. That's all. I'm not going to say they can't.
For sure.
I'm not going to say they can't.
I just think they're easily one of the 10.
Way too nice right now.
They're one of the 10 best teams in the season. I'm just trying to call it like I see it. And really quick, I just want to make this point. This goes back to the very first conversation we had. The whole point the SEC is trying to make is we are the biggest and the best conference because we get the best players. Well, what did Texas Tech just do? They got the best recruits. They're getting some of the best players right now. So they should be right up there by that SEC logic.
Yeah. Okay. So
the transfer portal, especially, sorry, Jake, is you should not be able to compete with SEC teams when a top player enters the transfer portal. Alabama gives you a call. They say, hey, blah, 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 7 figures. Yeah, I'm going to Alabama. But when Texas Tech calls you, and Texas Tech isn't blue collar, right? They're not Alabama. They're not Ohio State. With the least amount of disrespect intended, like they're not one of the top perceived teams in the Big 12, or at least they didn't used to be when Oklahoma and Texas were running the conference and everything. But now because you have that green in your pocket and the oil in your pocket and everything like that, now you can contend with the SEC. And that's something that I think, as Cody called him, Osama, whatever it was.
Osama bin Sankey.
There you go.
Can we say that? They're going to bleep that every
want to
time,
say
right?
it. I wanted him to say it. I did not want to say it. But, I mean, that's a real thing that we weren't seeing 5 years ago. You should not be able to contend with Alabama, Georgia, Florida when they're calling and throwing money at you. And yet here's Texas Tech with the best transfer class that the Big 12 has, one of the best ranked overall. Like, it's David Bailey's going to be a first-round pick. Who knows about the rest of the other guys that they've loaded up with? It's disgusting.
And we've had Nick Saban on NFL draft coverage say that, I remember what the player was. He said we tried to get him to go to Alabama every single year, and that athlete had never actually entered the transfer portal. That was Nick Saban admitting on air while he was at Alabama as an SEC program. The reason why Nick Saban has spoken out saying that we don't need a commission on this, I think that the SEC is actually kind of scared that the playing field has been leveled a little bit here with the money that's being injected. You have a Cody Campbell that can inject billions of dollars at Texas Tech. BYU, from what I understand, is they've got somewhere between 10 and 15, either hundreds of millions or billionaires in terms of they can dip into their pockets for NIL for BYU. That is going to level the playing field to a level that the SEC, I think, is frankly terrified of, because they want to continue to have the edge that they had, and Nick Saban had it for years and apparently doesn't mind admitting it after the fact.
We are a couple months removed really quick from Alabama's athletic director saying we need more money, like putting a tweet out there to the fans. We need more money. I totally agree. I think there are several aspects about the current world of college football, like whatever someone else mentioned, the Big Ten has won the last 2 national championships, that scare the SEC.
Yeah, and remember, this is the conference that prides themselves on it's just different. And now all of a sudden the Big 12 is right on their tails, and the Big 10 is as good as the SEC. I mean, I feel like we can make that argument, not even just because they won the last 2 national championships. I mean, I feel like if you stack some of the best Big 10 teams against the SEC, you're getting some pretty good competition.
We saw that in bowl games.
So,
Illinois beat South Carolina. We saw Alabama lose to Michigan. Like, we've seen this.
How
so
sweet was that to see Illinois spank them too?
Oh,
they're both.
That was a great hate watch.
They're both power conferences that are super top heavy.
Yeah,
right.
So I've got a question for Derek here, because obviously you're more in the basketball vein of things. On my radio show, one of my hosts actually brought this up earlier this week. Hey, Parker, I'll get to you in a second. You actually can weigh in on this as well. I you would have a thought on this.
Hold on, Parker. We have to go to the resident basketball guy. Okay.
So,
I'm here. What do you got?
With what Greg Sankey, essentially, he wants football to stand apart in the SEC. And the thought on my radio station was that, okay, if he wants to like hold football hostage, why doesn't Brett Yormark hold basketball hostage by saying, hey, we're the biggest and baddest in basketball. We're going to hold out on our end to make you guys obviously feel the pain. I know that Florida won the national championship, but the Big 12 top to bottom is a better basketball league. Why couldn't Brett Yormark hold that over their head?
I do think he is trying to lean into that. I mean, when you look at some of the things that he has done with, I don't know, the Big 12 tournament, and like they were going to do that Kansas-Houston game in Mexico. That didn't end up obviously happening. Like, I think he is trying to steer into that. All of those rumors that came about, I don't know, a year or two ago of like, could they add Gonzaga? Could they add UConn? Right. I think there is a part of him that's like, hey, from an international perspective, if we can get this thing going, like basketball will pick up internationally more than football would. And maybe that's like in the same way that if you look at the MLB, like the Dodgers have cornered the market in Japan from picking up Shohei Ohtani, and then they add like all these other players like Yamamoto and on and on and on. If they can do something like that, like I think that's kind of the idea that you can grow it that way. The problem is, even if you have the best basketball league in the world, that is worth something. And I could see us getting to a point where the basketball rights and the football rights are split up instead of them just saying, hey, we're selling the Big 12 rights to ESPN for $40 million a year. It's going to be football sold for this, basketball sold for this, especially in a conference like the Big 12, where maybe they'll make more off that than other conferences will, but it's still going to be a drop in the bucket compared to Big 10 and SEC football is the problem.
Parker, that brings me to this. You're the only guy on the show tonight that's in the state of Texas, obviously covering Houston. With Cody Campbell having the ear of the president, because he's golfed with President Trump, he's working apparently out there in Washington, D.C. in terms of wielding influence. Could he help drive things to help the Big 12 as a whole, even though he is very invested with Texas Tech in your mind?
I think he could. I think the other thing that's nice to have there, though, with him is that he's not just like kind of a Big 12 guy. You mentioned he played for Mike Leach. Rest in peace, Mike Leach. And like I think that there's some aspect of this that, frankly, when he was at Tech, they were kind of the fun, kind of weird. They weren't Pac-12 after dark or Hawaii at midnight or whatever, but they certainly were like kind of different. And I think he appreciates like that there's a conference of like kind of different football that, like, as JT said, any given Saturday, you're going to get absolute chaos in the Big 12, right? That's part of the fun. It's a bunch of quarterbacks throwing for 400 yards and Cam Scatterbo running like crazy. Like, it's a bunch of fun stuff happening every Saturday. I think having him connect Thomas in that way will help. I also think it's worth pointing out, though, that it's another billionaire. There are not a whole lot of those kinds of alumni. Arkansas is unique to the SEC that they've got a couple, but there is more of that in this conference, I think, than people realize, even if they're not all doing what Cody Campbell's doing with their money. I think these schools produce more of those kinds of alumni.
And that's something they're going to have to rely on, because that's going to make up the revenue gap. That right there, you're going to have those billionaires, if they are so invested with these programs. They got to help out these universities, because, Cody, you know this as well as anybody. To make up that revenue gap, you need to have a Boone Pickens, etc.
I think Cody Campbell, the spot that he's in is absolutely massive for the Big 12. This whole thing can't happen soon enough. The commission or whatever, that stuff clearly needs to happen quicker rather than later, because Sankey needs somebody to check his diapers for him occasionally.
It's not the same
America's Conference.
It's not the same role, but I would point out, while we're talking about, presidential connections to the Big 12, that he appointed Tillman Fertitta, like longtime Houston donor, big time Houston guy, as the ambassador to Italy. Like there's a connection that it's not the same. He's not asking for opinions on college football, but like clearly he has his eyes on Texas in that kind of way, at the very least, if not also the Big 12.
People who wield influence, there's no doubt about that. And talk about Fertitta, billionaire, Boone Pickens, billionaire. Obviously, it was a big proponent. BYU's got theirs. I know with JT, I know that the Huntsman family's been very invested with the. So the nice part is, I guess it's a very good point. The Big 12's got a lot of big money boosters, and they're going to be required to keep this conference competitive for however long it goes. All right, gentlemen, I think we have. We didn't have as much hijinks as last week, so I think we got.
We didn't talk about each other's hairlines or hats and all of that as much. I apologize.
I've got a quick football focused question for y'all since last.
You asked for it.
All hairline, no hat.
Oh, Jake Hatch.
I don't see Drake here. So
Drake here. All
right, so denominator.
All right, so I'm Jake Hatch. I cover BYU Locked On Cougars. That right next to me is Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Cougs. That's Houston, for those of you keeping track at home. Cody Stovall next to him, Locked On Oklahoma State. Just below him, JT Wisterso, all things Utah Utes with Locked On Utes. Richie Bradshaw, Locked On Sun Devils. And our man Derek Johnson out there in the Sunflower State covering the Jayhawks for Locked On Jayhawks. As always, thank you for tuning into the Big 12 squad. And as Drake likes to say, Dose Grande.